Welcome back. I'm Tanya Schulte of the Profit Constructors, and we're in the middle of a multiple part series on how to create and reconcile WIP reports utilizing Knowify and QuickBooks. We've already talked about why WIP reports are important and how you can use them to help make your business better. Now we're going to talk about exactly how to take the information and make sure that it's correct. At the end of the last video, I did say that we shouldn't just take everything at face value when we pull this report out of Knowify. So at this point, you've got your WIP report, but before you can really rely on it to make smart decisions, you're going to need to reconcile it against your QuickBooks Online. Here's the process that we use with our clients, and I like to think it's pretty straightforward. So start by running your WIP report in Knowify. Here I already have a WIP report that I've pulled for a test account. This report gives you a per job breakdown of the contract value, the costs to date, the estimated cost to complete, which would be the difference between your budget and your actuals, and all of your billings to date. So we've talked about in the past and various things. These are the four most important things that we need to have on a WIP report, and Knowify brings all of that to the table. Now, we're going to look at each of these amounts of what is either committed or actual, and we're going to double check that against the amounts that we have in QuickBooks Online. These are the recommended categories that we recommend for using in your cost of goods sold on your chart of accounts in QuickBooks. We recommend setting up a cost of goods sold account for direct labor, a cost of goods sold account for materials, one for subcontractors, one for equipment, and one for other job costs. That way we can directly match up actuals for materials, equipment, subs, and what Knowify calls miscellaneous. One quick note here, you'll notice that I didn't say we can directly match up direct labor. And that's because one of the great things about Knowify is that it allows us to cost labor with a burdened up cost rate. So there's never going to be a one-to-one equation back into your cost of goods sold for direct labor. We recommend establishing a good burden rate and understanding what that percent is on your books so that you can always take a look at whatever your committed labor is in Knowify and reconcile it back to your direct labor in QuickBooks within, a margin of percentage difference of whatever your burden rate is. That's a whole other video though. Okay, for each job in Knowify, we're going to total up the costs in those 5 categories and compare those totals to the costs that Knowify is reporting for that job over in QuickBooks. This step is crucial because it's going to help you confirm that what's being tracked in Knowify is actually syncing properly and being posted to the correct accounts in QuickBooks Online. So let's take a look at this. So I'll give you just an idea. These are the 5 categories, again, that we recommend. So other, equipment, subcontractors, materials, and direct labor. Again, keeping in mind, the reason we have direct labor here at the bottom, we are going to compare it with Knowify, but if we're using a burdened up labor rate in Knowify, that's never going to be a one-to-one comparison. Again, we can talk more about that in another video another time. Okay, if all the totals match, then great. You've done your job. So let's take a look at our little checklist for what we want to do here. If they don't match, then we're going to do this final step. So we're going to export the WIP report. We're going to pull our revenue and COGS reports out of QuickBooks. We're going to cross-check all of those numbers. And then if they don't match, we need to adjust the errors. So here's some things to look for. Are there invoices and or bills or receipts missing or sitting somewhere in a clearing account? Was something entered into Knowify but didn't sync into QuickBooks? You can always go into Knowify and double check your sync records and see if something perhaps got held up. Sometimes the invoice number that someone has entered could be too long. There are various reasons. Maybe a vendor, something happened with that vendor or that customer. So just double check that everything synced appropriately. And then kind of the third thing that would be important to check are were costs categorized to the wrong account or not assigned to the correct job. So those are some key areas that we look into when those key numbers aren't matching up. We're not just reconciling for accuracy, right? We're building trust in the numbers. So once you've completed this check for each job, you can be confident that the WIP report that you've pulled out of Knowify is financially sound. With your WIP report reconciled to your real books that you're carrying over in QuickBooks, you've now got a reliable tool that you can actually use. And that's what we're going to dive into in our next video, is how to turn this report into smarter business decisions.